currently at Project 4. Project 4 brings together the major ideas and practices that we have explored throughout the semester. You will design or substantially revise a small documentation system for a real, adapted, or simulated organization. The central challenge for you is to move beyond thinking about individual documents. Organizations do not simply need files. They need systems that help people locate the correct information, understand how documents relate to one another, recognize which versions are current, and know who is responsible for maintaining the content. Your finished project will contain 4 to 6 connected documentation items, but the number of documents is not what makes it a system. The relationships, organization, governance, and maintenance practices are what makes it function as one. Can another person find it, use it, update it, and assume responsibility for it? This is the question that will guide your project. You are not only designing for today's users, you are also designing for the person who may need to update, manage, or inherit the system later. Imagine opening a shared folder and finding several useful documents. The documents may address related topics, but users still have to determine where to begin, which file applies to their situation, and whether they have located the current version. That is a collection of files. A documentation system is intentionally structured around an organizational purpose and the tasks its users need to complete. It has a clear point of entry that helps users understand what the system contains and where they should begin. The documents use consistent terminology, titles, and organizational patterns. Related items are linked or positioned so that users can understand how they work together. A user completing one task can locate the document that supports the next step. The system also communicates content status. Users can identify the authoritative version instead of choosing among files labeled final, final revised, final new, and anything within that realm, which I am sure I am not the only person to have done before. Most importantly, the system does not depend entirely on the memory of the person who created it. It identifies who owns the content, who reviews or approves changes, when the documentation should be reviewed, and what should happen when the information becomes outdated. That is the shift I want you to make in this project. From organizing files to designing an infrastructure that supports people, tasks, and ongoing documentation work. You can think of the project through these 4 actions. First, you will create or substantially revise 4 to 6 documentation items that respond to a shared organizational need. Second, you will connect those items through a point of entry, clear organization, meaningful navigation, and consistent language and design. Third, you will establish governance. That means identifying content owners, reviewers, approval processes, and methods for determining and distinguishing drafts from authoritative versions. Finally, you will plan for maintenance. You will determine when content should be reviewed, what events should trigger an update, how outdated information should be archived or retired, and how responsibility could be transferred when personnel change. A system is only sustainable when these practices are clear enough for someone other than its original creator to follow. During week 13, you will define the organization's documentation problem, users, purpose, and scope. You will select 4 to 6 connected items and create an initial inventory and system map. In week 14, you will develop the documentation, create the point of entry, and begin the maintenance guide. In week 15, another student will conduct a handoff test to determine whether a new person can enter, use, understand, and maintain the system. In week 16, you will revise and submit the completed system. Your final submission will include the documentation system, the content inventory and status tracker, the documentation maintenance guide, evidence from a handoff test and resulting revisions, and the documentation strategy memo. As you begin, don't start by asking which files you want to create. Begin with the organizational problem. Identify who needs the documentation, what they need to accomplish, and what currently prevents them from doing so, and what would be required to keep that information reliable over time. The strength of this project will come from the system behind the documents, not simply the individual documents themselves. Begin by reviewing the Project 4 guide and then complete this week's system